And then good morning or afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to the Jaybefaunt channel. I am your host, James Fauntleroy. It is so good to see you all on this beautiful Sunday, October 9th, 2022. Just to let you guys know, the Jaybefaunt show is available on all major podcast platforms like Anchor, Apple, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, so you can subscribe to me there. I'm also part of the Revolutionary Blackout Network. So if you would like to see me, you can see me later today on the JB Show on Sundays at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can also catch me on Tuesdays on RBN Live at 4 and on Thursdays with the Sabby and JB Show on Thursdays at 6 p.m. Please make sure to give this video a thumbs up if you are new. And if you have not yet, please make sure to subscribe and click the notification bell. I may promise you cookies if you do. Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. Also, give a shout out to my patrons on Patreon and Coffee. Thank you for without your support, I would not have a channel. I want to give a special thank you to all of you. A special shout out also to Sim Metzger as well as JM on becoming new Jaybefaunt members. So thank you so very much. I know I'm a little late, but I wanted to make sure I also gave a shout out to you all as well. Hello to everybody in the chat. I will get to all of you in a second. But first, I would like to introduce my special guest. I have been trying to get this guy like Thanos is trying to collect the Infinity Stones. So, so I'm just glad to have you, activist as well as commentator and journalist, Richard Medhurst. Richard, so good to have you.
It's great to be here and to speak with you, brother. Really, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. By the way, I also have my tea because, you know, we got to have our tea, you know, so I got that ready. And one of the first things that I wanted to ask, and I don't know if you ever watched this show called Inside the Actor Studio. I'm not sure if you ever seen it before.
It's I remember it. I think it's from the 90s. It goes back a couple of decades. They interview actors one-on-one and ask them about their career, something like that.
Yeah. The first interview that I typically have on this channel is kind of sort of that format where it's basically like an Inside the Actor Studio for activists and commentators. You know what I mean?
Nice.
Because the thing is that I want this to be a way to encourage people to get into the space, especially those of us who are a little bit more melanin abundant, because those of us who are melanin abundant, you don't see as many of us in this space. And so a lot of people who may also be, you know, from parts of the world that your family is from, or parts of, you know, the world that may be part of the African diaspora or the Asian diaspora, you know, for us to get into the space in order to encourage more voices so that we can really use it to fight against the imperialistic and capitalistic forces that we see around the world.
Yeah, absolutely. That's extremely important. And I think last time you and I we were talking about how there's been this relationship between the Black liberation movement, the Black civil rights movement in the U.S., and you know, the Palestinian, the PLO, right, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, and
Yeah.
I believe it was Huey Newton, right? So he from the Black Panther Party. I think he said once that Israel was created by Western imperialism and is maintained by Western firepower. So, you know, like even back then, from the '67 war and onwards, like there was this intercommunalism between the Black liberation movement in the U.S. and the Palestinians, and you know, having an embassy without a state, right? As they did in Algeria, and again to this day, like there's no Palestinian country. This sense of disenfranchisement, I think it's really important. like you can't say that, okay, the Palestinian struggle, the black struggle is like a one-to-one copy, but they do share a lot of similar characteristics, and that is
Yeah.
something that has to be like, it has to be highlighted, it has to be exposed, it has to be shown to the world, and it should be like a calling for people to do that. So I mean, I just wanted to say, like, I agree 100% what you just said, that we need more people from whether they're Black American or they're African or from Asia, wherever it is, people that have been affected by imperialism, they need to come together and give and make their voices heard, because each one of their stories is unique, but it all connects.
Well, I mean, and you touched on this, but it's very important. A lot of people don't realize is that the experience with the Palestinians, as well as with Black people, especially here in the United States, or really in the West, we have really an overlapping of experiences, and a lot of the police force here in the United States has been trained by the Israeli Defense Force in Israel. So
Yep.
really, the tactics that are being used against the Palestinians are a lot of the same tactics that are used against the people that look like me here in this country. So I honestly think that it behooves any of us who are Black and within the diaspora, especially in the West, to really pay attention to what's going on in Gaza and in the West Bank, because what's going on with them is really just almost a near mirror reflection of what's going on with us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that video where we saw George Floyd being killed, with this the knee
Yeah.
on his neck, that we all know, just in America alone, that was not a unique thing. That he's not the only person who that happened to.
Yeah.
Like, you shouldn't have to get killed for that to be a bad thing, for people to realize it's a bad thing. But
Mhm.
even that act alone, that form of, I don't know if you can call it restraining someone. It's you're basically killing them.
Mhm.
That act, that aggression,
Mhm.
like you just pointed out, that's a copy, it's a mirror of the things that Palestinians have to are subjected to, that they suffer at the hands of Israeli police, right? You can
Yeah.
find literally tons of photographs from Israelis putting their knees on Palestinians' necks, and cops doing that to Black people in America, and put them side by side, and it's like a mirror.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy. It's crazy, and
Well,
that's just one thing, right?
yeah. Well, I think, I mean, and I think you would agree with me that really, I mean, it's more of a semantics thing, but we can call it torture in real time, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. I
yeah,
mean,
absolutely.
we call it lynching here in the United States because that's what they did to a lot of our ancestors.
Yeah,
Hell, they're still doing it to my people here down to this day, and so really, it's torture in front of our eyes, and
yeah,
I think that that activated so many people. But the crazy part is, I wish there was as much turnout for George Floyd as there was for all the other people who were basically lynched, not just here in the United States, but also in Palestine,
yeah,
also in Syria, also in Yemen, also in Somalia. Like, there's so many of these George Floyds that have happened.
yeah.
I mean, we cannot forget Abu Ghraib, right?
Man, I,
Because
I I have those images in my head to this day from when it
yeah,
broke. So
yeah, yeah,
horrific stuff.
yeah. And when Abu Ghraib happened, I was maybe in my late 20s, early 30s. I'm dating myself, but yeah, I mean, it's just crazy because you see what this country has done. Like, for instance, and a lot of times people will talk about, I think the presidency of Joe Biden has lulled so many of us to sleep that they don't realize that Joe Biden is just Donald Trump in blueface.
Exactly.
So,
That's a great way of putting it. Yeah, yeah,
so but all he basically doing is doing the exact same thing. I don't know if you remember, but you remember when Mohammed bin Salman was sitting right next to Donald Trump, and Donald Trump was like, "Oh, we're selling the weapons to Saudi Arabia,"
with the
right?
cardboard. Yeah,
Yeah. And then it's like, so what's the difference? Because Joe Biden's doing the exact same thing with Saudi Arabia. What's the difference? And you're doing a proxy war with Saudi Arabia and Yemen that are literally massacring Yemeni people.
Yep.
So it's
Absolutely.
like, what do you say to people who are like, well, Joe Biden's slightly better? What do you say to that from somebody who has family in the region and knows what's going on in that region?
Well, I say what I just echo your sentiment that he's Trump in blueface. I mean, we shouldn't forget Biden and his national security advisor Jake Sullivan,
Mhm.
Blinken. A lot of these people who are in Joe Biden's administration, including Biden himself, they are the ones who
Yeah.
helped start that war against Yemen in the first place, because they were in the Obama administration. So you basically have a continuity of weapons sales from the U.S. to the Saudis. And of course,
Mhm.
with those weapon sales, it's not just about money. It's also about having this regional policeman, so to speak, like that. Okay. The Israelis help them keep the Syrians in check, and the Lebanese in check, and the Palestinians and so on, and the Egyptians
Mhm.
and Jordanians. And then when it comes down to the Gulf, they have Saudi Arabia that's there to antagonize Iran, to make sure, you said Somalia and Yemen, which is very important. Why do they mess with these countries? These countries, if you look where Somalia is, it's Horn of Africa, and then right opposite you have Yemen. This is the most important shipping lane in the world. Once again, we come back to the all-encompassing issue of resources and land, and it's all about money, right? It's not the only factor, but it's one of the most important ones, and we should keep that in mind. The geography is so important to keep in mind. And I think it's disgusting how people like they they fall asleep because Biden is at the wheel, while he's also falling asleep at the wheel. But like, it
Yeah.
couldn't get any worse. Like it's really bad. It's really bad. And I think Donald Trump, he reversed the ban on cluster bomb sales to the Saudis. So he basically wanted to just sell them even more lethal weapons. I'm not sure if they reversed that, the Biden administration. It's kind of besides the point. Like, whether it's conventional or cluster bombs, what's the difference? People need to remember that it's not just bombs killing people in Yemen. There's economic warfare.
Sanctions.
If sanctions, exactly, if sanctions weren't deadly, they wouldn't use them, right? The entire Treasury and the Office of Foreign Assets Control, which is in it, is now headed by a woman, right? By Janet Yellen. And we know why Biden did this. He did this because he wants to give the appearance of like caring about minorities. So like he'll have Lloyd Austin, who's a black man, heading the Pentagon, or a woman heading the Treasury. But what's the difference if the policies that they bring into the office with them are identical to their predecessor? And then you'll have people say, yeah, but Biden, he reversed these sanctions that Trump put on the Houthis. Like I think Pompeo did that for him 2 days before Trump
Yeah.
left, and they came in and reversed it. Once again, I would say what I said 2 minutes ago, which is that these guys, Blinken, Sullivan, Biden, they were there when this war started. They allowed it to happen. They sold the weapons to the Saudis. And there are a lot of other sanctions aside from the ones that Trump did, which are still, making people in Yemen suffer. I mean, uh, you the whole world right now is seeing how the cost of gas, of fuel, destroys the economy. Whether it's a household, a business, food prices, medicine, everything becomes more expensive. Like in Yemen, just last year alone, the inflation was 40%, and that's because the Saudis, they keep or I should say the Saudi-led coalition, because it's not just one U.S. puppet state; it's multiple. They're diverting fuel ships all the time, and they hold them for a couple of months, sometimes over a year. And then people, when they go to get the fuel at the pump in Yemen, they're half of the money that they're paying is just demurrage costs, which is basically like shipping fines, because the ships were kept hostage for so long. So you have all these incurred costs that don't need to be there, that are just making people in Yemen suffer. And then, of course, you have the other sanctions that are, whether it's in Syria, which, again, this is another Trump policy that Biden has kept. The Caesar Act sanctions still in place. Nothing's changed. Biden's still stealing the oil. The sanctions that are, on Iran are still there. Actually, they added more to them. And now Russia overtook Iran as the number one sanctioned country. So, we see how deadly sanctions are and why they use them, because They talk about, Russia weaponizing energy. What about America weaponizing the dollar? That's something that needs to be talked about, because that's how they they destroy economies and wreak havoc. And it's not going to work out in the long term, I'm afraid, because we already see the blowback. But yeah, as far as Biden and Trump are concerned, man, they're all the same. They're really, really all the same. And I knew that the foreign policy, especially, is just going to be copy paste continuation of Trump.
Well, I mean, and dare we ever, talk about it as vocally as somebody like Julian Assange did? I know there was an action around Parliament yesterday. There was also an action for Assange in Washington D.C. yesterday as well. That was a day that, for solidarity, as far as
Yeah.
free speech goes. I'm not sure if you were able to observe what happened in Parliament yesterday.
Yeah,
But
there were thousands of people who came there. It was really incredible. I see
yeah,
popping up on the screen now. Yeah.
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 So this is actually here in Washington. Um, they had it in Washington where they were doing the Free Julian
Great.
Assange
That makes me very
wraparound.
happy that
The
it was doing it. They were doing it worldwide. That's wonderful.
I think is yeah. And then there's more where they have many different people who are vital to the information that we know about what the United States is doing in our name, really unethically. You have many people who spoke out, and um, I one of the things that I appreciate about you, and there's Dr. Jill Stein. She also ran for president under the Green Party here in the United States. But one of the things about them and about you that I appreciate is that you took a strong stance for people like Julian Assange as well, because you realize that the freedom of the press is one of our great freedoms that we have in order to,
Yeah.
to fight against tyranny.
Yeah. Thank you. And I mean, when it comes to the Assange case, I mean, I was just reporting what's happening in the courtroom, and the only conclusion and reaction that you can um, come to when understanding what is happening in that courtroom is to be is to simply be outraged. And we should keep in mind, like, even though it's the United States that's trying to yank him across the ocean and bring him to some federal supermax in Colorado, and he will have no fair trial. Of course, that's no one who is charged under the Espionage Act ever has a fair trial. There's no public
Mm-hmm.
interest defense, for one. So if you're a journalist and you can't, you published damning government documents because it's in the public interest, and you can't make that argument in court, how you call that a fair trial? Never mind the First Amendment, right? So like, that shows you on multiple levels how they're just destroying right to a fair trial,
Mm-hmm.
First Amendment rights. And I really could go on forever, because there are so many things wrong with this case. But I just want to say that it's the UK that's also screwing him, right? Like, they've been doing this for a decade now. They tried to get him to Sweden. I'm my if I could say so, my quote unquote field of expertise is the current trial, not the Swedish one. It's the current one where they're trying to put him in jail for 175 years. So it's 17 charges under the Espionage Act, and then there's one conspiracy to commit computer intrusion. So together that's 175. And the British, they we made sure that Assange would I mean, first of all, we tried to yank him out of the embassy, which is, I mean, to call that like a violation of international law is an understatement. You can't go into a foreign embassy and just arrest people. I mean, there are some exceptions, but that's something like if there's a serial killer, there's a murderer, something that is of extreme immediate danger. A journalist is not one of them. And so, especially one that's already been granted political asylum by that country, which was the case. and even given citizenship, and they tried to register Assange as a diplomat, but the British wouldn't accept his accreditation. Which, okay, fair enough. You know, you're not obliged to accept another country's every single accreditation from another country, but there was threats at one point to go in the embassy, and that is absolutely out of line. And then they spied on him in that embassy, so the British allowed the Americans to just like come and conduct, you know, espionage operations in central London, and once again in a foreign embassy. And you know, they arrested him, and they kept him in jail. They gave him a maximum sentence of 50 weeks for bail jumping, which I don't know how often that happens for a non-violent publisher. But they did it, and they did that because they knew the Americans would have enough time to prepare that indictment. So, you know, here we are, and I like all of that just to say that we shouldn't forget there are multiple governments, multiple actors who are trying to screw him and make an example out of him. You know, it's like, you know, you don't have to like Assange or his personality or whatever random stuff they try to like character assassinate him with. This is irrelevant. This is irrelevant.
Yeah.
The focal point here is he embarrassed them with really like heinous crimes. I mean, torture, kidnapping. You know, one guy who came to or tried testifying, he was kidnapped by the CIA. They took him. He was a German citizen. They kidnapped him and found out that he was the wrong guy. And then, you know, this is of course after they tortured him for months, put a bag on his head. You know, they abused him sexually as well. I'm not going to get into the details, but they all forms of torture. You know, it's disgusting. It's really disgusting. And this is one of the things that helped him win the case in the European Court of Human Rights. So it's you know, when you have someone like Assange that's proving that the CIA tortured people, they don't like that, you know, and that's just one case out of, I mean, so there's so many other things, right? So they try to make an example out of him and scare the rest of us and, you know, punish him. That's what it's really about. And that shows you that they're doing something wrong, and they know they're doing something wrong.
This makes me also think about Mumia Abu Jamal, and how, you know, he's been in prison for 39 years, because of, you know, his journalism as well in the United States against, you know, the powers that be. So there's a lot of different political prisoners, whether they're part of the Black Liberation Army, Black Panthers. This country continuously, you know, any type of dissent that uncovers the evils of the West, really, it is you're punished, and they make it so that they demonize you and make it seem like, oh, this person's horrible, when really it's, would you say it's projection that the United States is doing?
There you go. That's it.
Yeah.
It's absolutely projection. And Abu Jamal, which you just mentioned, that he absolutely another great example. I would also put Georges Abdallah. He's in the French have him, so he's, of course, you know, it's a similar story. They say like, oh well, he killed some officer of the law. I think in his case they said he killed an Israeli or something. You know, at the end of the day, he's a political prisoner. I think in Europe, at least in Europe, he's the longest serving one. And it's sad because he's been there for decades. Like people, I feel like this is very good for these governments because they're very happy people don't make any ruckus or noise about them, and that they're forgotten, which is basically what they would do with it. They are trying to do and will do with Assange, like they did to Abdullah and Abu Jamal. It's really you hit the nail on the head. You know, if you show what's going on, and how the governments act, they will vilify you and they'll put you in jail. They'll cook up something. They'll make the victim look like the victimizer, or the bullied look like the bully. Yeah, exactly. Like they will flip the whole story on its head. And that's what they do to journalists. That's what they do to civil rights activists, to black rights activists, to Georges Abdallah is Lebanese, but he's, you know, you would just say he's in the resistance. So when we say resistance, we're talking, of course, against Western imperialism, against Zionism. So, that's what they do. I would also just recall, because we were talking Black Panther Party, Huey and wasn't there how many shots were fired in that apartment again? I lost count, but it was a couple of dozen shots that they killed them in their sleep in a
Fred
quote
Hampton.
unquote. Yeah, Fred Hampton and Huey as well. They both accused them of committing crimes and basically carried out extrajudicial assassinations. That's what it's about. Right.
Yeah.
So that shows you again, when you like, those guys were effective, they were smart, they were doing the right thing. That's why they got rid of them, and that's the punishment in the West. That's how it is,
hell, they did it. They did it to Martin Luther King Jr.
Thank you very much. There you go.
It's just any type of dissent that threatens the power of the oligarchs. And yes, we have oligarchs here in the United States. Everybody wants to say, "Oh, oligarchs are in Russia." There are more oligarchs here in the United States, and they're way more richer than some of the oligarchs in Russia. And that being said, they're the ones that dictate to what I'm about to go on a rant.
You go ahead. Go ahead. You're taking the words out of my mouth. Do it, man. Yeah. Do it.
Well, okay. So, and the thing is that people want to talk about, we are so propagandized in this country that we will look at oligarchs with rose-colored glasses in this country. Some of us will look at somebody like a Bill Gates and say, "Oh, Bill Gates, he is such a great guy. He did all these things for us. He earned his way." It's like, no, he did not. He did not. Look, the only thing that Bill Gates ever earned was some bad gas and, I don't know, maybe a couple dollars. That was it. He didn't earn anything. Look, Bill Gates is literally buying up all the farmland in the United States right now, and people aren't even looking at it. It's like, wait, do you want one man to have all the power over all your food? Like, what?
I can tell you one thing. The Israelis did that to the Palestinians, and it does not end well. When you take all the farmland, just to draw a parallel there. But that's exactly what this rose, the rose glass is like. Oh, they earned their way, but like some guy who's like, sweating in a shop, doing customer service, burgers, teaching, plumbing, whatever it is. Like that's, they deserve to be poor. Apparently, like they're not earning their way, or it's really this. I don't know what to call it, but it's kind of like an extremely distorted view of society and class, and people who are not from that class, who are not, in Bill Gates' sphere, constantly defending that sphere. Like, that it's crazy. I mean, just a quick example, like just pick any random American. They probably have more in common with the average Joe in China than they do with Bill Gates, right? Like. That's how it is. Or pick any other country, it doesn't matter. But like the countries that they try to portray as enemies, the people there are not enemies. You have more in common with them than you do with your own quote unquote billionaires or whatever. And they look the other way, of course, with all the shady stuff. I seem to recall in Windows, what is it, 95 or 98, they also built some NSA backdoor. There was a whole scandal about that. But the thing which is funny with big tech billionaires, because you're seeing Elon Musk now. I think he's helping them with Starlink in Iran or something. Where was this again? Yeah, I think it's in Iran. So because right now they're trying to destabilize Iran the same way they did with Syria. And what they'll do is they'll find some kind of crack in the society. Like there might be some tragic event that happens, and then they'll blow it out of proportion. So it becomes, oh, the government allegedly killed this woman. Then it goes to, well, we want to get rid of the veil, the hijab. And then it goes to, oh, we want to get rid of the entire government. And we're going to do that with sanctions. Oh, I know this playbook. They've been doing this for 40 years to Iran. They've been trying to get rid of them for 40 years because they don't give them their oil. That's what it's about. It's the same dirty playbook. And the billionaires, the tech industry is very important in that, because they work in tandem with the State Department. You know, I can just remind you, in 2009, you also had protests in Iran, and the State Department contacted Twitter and got them to postpone their scheduled maintenance on the website so that it would stay online for people in Iran to basically use against the government. And you know, it just shows you again this kind of special relationship that you have, where on one hand it's like, okay, well, the Zuckerberg and Bill Gates, they're independent, self-made guys and everything, or Elon Musk, and then you look at their other dealings and you see that, oh, okay, so the CIA has contracts with Amazon for, you know, which is owned by Jeff Bezos. The Pentagon has contracts with Elon Musk, and you know, you really look at the relationship between the state and these corporations, and you're going to find them working together in a lot of spheres. You know, especially in foreign policy. That's very, very, very interesting.
Well, even this was brought out in Midwestern Marks there in the chat as well. But they were talking about how the national security state is even employed by TikTok. You know?
Yeah. I remember that. Yeah. They tried to get the White House. I think they got some I think it was 10 famous TikTokers to come to the White House, and then they basically brainwashed them with like talking points about how to blame the blowback from the sanctions against Russia on Russia. Right. So it's Putin's price hike. It's not, oh, we're idiots and we tried weaponizing, you know, the dollar and everything. Although, to be fair, the Americans, you know, and of course, when we say Americans, we're talking about these billionaires, the same ones, right? The same corporations, the government. They are profiting in a way from this, because they not only are they making money from the weapon sales in the name of, you know, supporting Ukraine, but also they're going to have a lot of European industry going bust and having to move to America instead, or buy gas from America instead, which they've been trying to do for a long time, like since the Bush administration. This is not even something new. So yeah.
Well, I mean, and look, I put out a tweet. And I said, "Can we cancel Zelensky now?" And so many people are like, "Oh, you're anti-Semitic," or "Oh, you're a Putin puppet." I'm like, didn't you guys just not watch that video when Zelensky was literally calling for a preemptive nuclear strike on Russia, on civilian people? Are you kidding me right now? So me saying we can cancel Zelensky is me being a horrible human being, but Zelensky calling for a preemptive nuclear strike on a civilian population, that's okay?
Basically, yeah. You know,
does that make sense?
I'll tell you why, man, because nuclear war and truck bombs are in now. So, you know, this is the this is the fashion now. Come on, you got to get with the program, you know?
You got to get down with the Christian jihad, right?
Man, this is so funny. Like, you know, Zelensky is now the I mean, I don't even know what to call him. I was gonna say favorite, but I feel like he's certainly being used to some extent. You know, like they tell him the things that he wants to hear, and they you know, Boris Johnson, who was British Prime Minister until a few weeks ago, when I think this is back in June, July, in summer, he went and visited Zelensky, and he basically got him to railroad the peace talks, right? So that's just one example of how they keep this war going. And if they cared about Ukrainians, they would never have used Ukraine in the first place. And you know, I don't know what to say, because we are at this point now where, you know, Zelensky saying he wants to, as you pointed out, he wants to preemptively drop a tactical nuke on Russia. Like, this is bravery, apparently. You know, like it's incredible to me how the Ukrainians, everybody cares about their borders and their territorial integrity and their sovereignty and their right to resist. And when Arabs do that, they call them terrorists. You know, like you know, throwing a rock at an Israeli soldier, or you taking up arms against an Israeli a soldier, or even BDS, like just peaceful boycott of Israeli goods. You know, it's either terrorism or it's violence or anti-Semitism. Like, there's always some excuse to invalidate the Palestinian struggle. But when it comes to the Ukrainians, there's every excuse to validate their struggle against the Russians. And you know, it's really an interesting time of double standards on every level, every level.
Well, I mean, look, the double standards are deep. I mean, they can talk about Ukraine and they can talk about Israel and how they have a right to defend themselves. But the question is, do the Palestinians have a right to defend themselves? Or let's go this way.
There you
How
go.
many people are talking about what's going on in Haiti right now?
Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry, they're the wrong color. That's what it is. The
Yeah.
Palestinians are the wrong color.
Yeah.
Or the Syrians are the wrong color. The Yemenis are the wrong color. They're all the wrong color until, it's like, oh, well, they're throwing rocks at somebody who is melanin deficient. Then it's like, oh my God, they're terrorists.
Yeah.
And then here's the thing. It's like, and nobody wants to talk about the terrorism that, this country does to, like, okay, Black people who may be watching. You know how a lot of us look at the Confederate battle flag? That's how many people outside the United States see the American flag.
That's true.
Am I right or wrong?
You are 100% right. That is the reaction, and I would say the British flag too, by the way.
Yeah.
Like same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, this is an accurate assessment, and it's what you just said is 100% accurate. A lot of people, that doesn't mean they hate the average American or they want to hurt the average American. It's quite the contrary. They just want to be left alone. They don't want
Yes.
to be hurt by America. And when I say America, I'm not saying that every single person there is some mass murderer. No. On the contrary, it's these, like we were talking about, the billionaires, the government, the multinational corporations, who are really they have now moved basically from Europe, although many of them are still there, but they've given or handed the torch over to the US. So I view the United States very much as an extension of the British Empire, because
True.
1/5 of the planet, close to a quarter actually, of the planet under British rule, and they left behind Australia, they left behind Israel, they left behind the US, Canada, the Five Eyes, basically the Five Eyes countries, and Israel, and they carved up the maps. But it's not just the British. Remember, the French, the Dutch, the Portuguese, they all did this crap too. But the British especially had the most control, and people, like, they think that this is something from 100 years ago, 200 years ago. It doesn't matter anymore. No, it's very, very much the issue to this very moment. And like you said, apparently, people from Yemen, or whether it's Syria, whatever, it's not just the wrong skin color. It's also because obviously that has to be an issue. I don't understand how you can, like, colonize people without being racist towards them. That means that if you're colonizing them, that means you view yourself as superior,
Yeah.
and that's racism, and it's xenophobia, and
Mm-hmm.
in addition to that, it's also the resources, right? Which
Yes.
again comes back to the same kind of thing, because it's like they give themselves the inherent right to go and steal something that is not theirs because they think that they deserve it. And you hear this from the Israelis, by the way. They say, "Oh, we're the chosen people." Like, this is like they think they're supreme, they're superior to the people there, and it's funny because even Palestinian Jews, Arab Jews, are not treated equally in by the Israelis. Yeah, and Black Jews from Ethiopia as well. They get treated the worst. So so much for Israel being a democracy. And it's just incredible to me. And if you open your mouth, apparently that makes you anti-Semite, or if you you don't want American or British bases in your country, that means you hate the West. It's always this victimhood mentality, right? Like, oh, it's what Bush said. They hate us for our freedoms. This is the mentality. Like, we bomb them, but we are the victims. That's the mentality in the West.
Yeah, and everybody's like, oh, if you stand with the Palestinians, you're an anti-Semite. Meanwhile, Orthodox Jews are also standing with Palestine too. Are they anti-Semitic? In fact, if we're standing with Palestinians and Palestinians are Semites, then isn't that kind of an oxymoron to be called anti-Semitic if you're standing with Semites just happen to be more browner than the other ones?
That's the thing, man. Just look up the word Semite. It literally means anyone from the Levant who speaks Arabic, speaks Hebrew, Assyrian. It's a collective. It's not just one group of people. And Palestinians by definition are Semites. Arabs are Semites by definition. The funny thing is though that I the way that Israelis treat the local population, whether they are Arab Muslim, Arab Christian, I'm Arab Christian from my mother's side, right? So in Syria, 10% of the population are Christian, right? So that it's a minority there, but you also have Palestinian Christians and Iraqi Christians and so on, right? Obviously, because Christianity comes from there. I know people like to think it's from New York and Jesus was white, but no. And these religions have been living peacefully with each other for thousands of years. Okay,
yeah.
And I've seen that with my own eyes in Syria. No one can tell me otherwise. There's no problem between, and you have like 24 ethnicities and religions and so on. It's just crazy how the Israelis, who are many of them are Europeans. Every Israeli prime minister to this day is either born in Europe, their parents were born in Europe, or their grandparents were born in Europe. All of them, every single one. And they're usually Eastern European, so Polish, Ukrainian, and so on. And so they come to the Middle East, and then they treat the people from the Middle East like they're inferior, including other Jews, right, who have the different skin color. And it reminds me how the Crusaders, they would come to the Middle East and in the name of reclaiming the Holy Land, and then when they got to Jerusalem, they massacred everybody, including the Christians. It's the same. For me, I view it, and not just for me, it's for everybody who is paying attention to what's happening. These groups hijack religion. The Israelis hijack Judaism and use that as a vehicle for settler colonialism. The Crusaders hijacked Christianity and which again came from the same place and used it as a political tool. Same way ISIS does that, right? And of course, who is feeding ISIS and Al Qaeda weapons and intelligence and gave them the power vacuum to take over? It's the West. So they always hijack religion and use it to attack this region, to colonize this region because of its its importance in just simply its geography, being a crossroads between Europe, Asia, and Africa, and then of course its resources. And they've been doing this for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years.
Yeah. I have something to tell you. I didn't even get to my actual first question yet.
Sorry, bro. I couldn't hear you. It cut off for 1 second. I didn't hear you. Sorry.
I said I didn't even get to my actual first question yet.
All right. So you relate to me when I'm live, man.
Yeah, I do.
All right. No sweat, man.
Yeah.
No, I love that. You see, it flows naturally. That's why I was really happy to come on and to be here. And I knew it was gonna be good. Even though it's ironic because the shit we're talking about is, sorry, I don't know if I can cuss, but the stuff we're talking about is so horrible. Like we gotta laugh. We have to laugh, otherwise we'll go crazy and cry. Like there's no other way.
Definitely. Yeah, I say the exact same thing. But my first question is, as a commentator and activist, can you give us a brief summary of how you got into this and what moved you into the independent media space?
I mean, it's a combination of things. I mean, I was thinking about this myself, how the politics of international relations kind of influenced my life since I was born, where I lived, where I grew up, because my parents were working in the UN in peacekeeping. So before I was born, they were in Angola, in UNAVEM. So that was also a UN mission there. So I was conceived in Angola. I was born then in Damascus, and then we lived in Pakistan, and then in Geneva, and in Switzerland, and all over the place. And my parents, like I said, they did missions before I was born: Lebanon, Syria, and Africa, and it's their collective knowledge and experiences plus my own, which kind of made everything that's happening in the world like stuff that was, you know, every day at the dinner table. You know, I think even just every regular family that's in the Middle East, you know, people, whether they like it or not, they have to listen and care about politics because it's influencing their lives every single day. You know, whether it's Israel, whether it's the United States, whether it's the French, it's the British, it's the Ottomans, you know, this has been going on for centuries, that people are coming and going and coming and going and molding the Middle East to their liking. And of course, you know, it's like I said, it's these collective experiences. So my mother being Syrian, my father being British, I have all this shared knowledge from them and my own experiences. And I just, you know, unfortunately, I care too much about what's happening to stay silent. It makes me very angry, and that's the main reason why, you know, I get up and do what I do. I didn't like dream of becoming a journalist or something. It's just, I don't know. It just happened. I just put my thoughts out there, and that's it. It's
really, it kind of sounds like, and I don't mean to make light of this, but it was almost like the influence and the care that you have for what's going on with any oppressed people. It's like that. It's like that calling was like Scorpion from from Mortal Kombat saying, "Get over here," you know, and you're just like, "Okay, I'm gonna talk about it." And
Yep.
so, and the funny, crazy part is, you don't have as many people saying what you're saying here in the United States. I mean, you may have people like you. I know we have people like Ronnie Akalik. We have many people who are, you know, who either have family in that region or who are from that region that are trying to let us know what's going on,
Yeah.
but it's not in the mainstream media.
There you
Or
go.
if it is, if people like that are in the mainstream media, they always take the Western narrative
Yes.
and not
Yeah.
the actual narrative for what's objectively happening on the ground in that area.
Yeah, exactly. This is something that I also wanted to highlight, which is kind of like I ended up realizing that I have a sense of duty because, you know, I'm responsible for communicating what the other side is not able to communicate, because like you said, people in the Middle East, um, even when they speak in English, right? Like if it's a Palestinian lawyer or journalist or whatever trying to speak in English, their viewpoint will not get broadcast on Western media. And the few times that you do hear it, they're mocked or they're treated as, you know, like they're vilified, they're cast out, etc. But it's not the mainstream. So I ended up realizing that I have an obligation to do whatever I can, whether it's you know, about Syria, or it's about, you know, Palestine. I know, like my cousin is half Palestinian, half Syrian, but even if he wasn't, I would still care about that because that's just what other Arab countries do. Like even the countries like Bahrain, or Morocco or Saudi Arabia, who actually have ties with the Israelis, either out in the open or under the table. The people there reject Israel. Morocco, for example, the Israeli diplomats cannot even find apartments in Morocco because people just don't want to let them apartments because they are against what Israel is doing to the Palestinians. So you have the solidarity to begin with, either way. You know, whether you have Palestinian family or you don't. And then, of course, you know, Syria is also occupied by the Israelis, so it's not as bad. Of course, the Golan Heights is not as bad as what's happening in the West Bank and Jerusalem and so on. But it's still annexation and colonization, and it's a taste of it. And Syrians had the French before that. They know what it means, just like many Arab people know what it means. So you know, and like let's be very straight up, man. Like I speak four languages. I'm a British citizen. My name's Richard Thomas Medhurst. People will listen to what I have to say more than someone who has maybe an Arabic name, you know, or who is Muslim. So you know, the little privileges that I have, I have to use them. And I've had this conversation with other Syrians, with people of color from all over the world, whatever it is, whether it's Palestine, whether it's the Black liberation movement in America, whatever I can speak on, I have to do that, because I might end up being able to get across more than someone who can't do it or doesn't have the strength. A lot of people just don't. Even with me, man, I get tired of this, like emotionally and mentally. This stuff is exhausting. To see people suffering like that every day. And I know you know what I mean. I know you can relate to it. Even like I've never been to Yemen, but I can see what is happening. I know what is happening there. I've worked with Yemeni economists on that investigation I did about sanctions, so I know in detail what's happening. That upsets me. When I see what's happening to Black Americans at the hands of slavery, and then the brutality during the civil rights movement era, the repression that's still going on to this day, that pains me. It breaks my heart. There's and I'm seeing, and there's a pattern of European colonialism and imperialism that is at the root, at the center of all the suffering, that's been inflicted worldwide. So I have to, especially actually as a British citizen, I have to say that, because that is being conscious of your own history, criticizing, holding your government accountable. It's not just about criticizing it for the sake of criticizing it, but holding those powers accountable. There's nothing like special about repeating what the the British establishment media or the American establishment media say. That there's something brave about that, or challenging about that, or intellectually stimulating about that. To do the opposite, and to understand why people on the other side of the planet are saying the things that they're saying, are feeling the way that they're feeling, why their country is the way that it is, and realizing that there's a really, really abusive, aggressive dynamic here that goes back centuries. That is something that needs to be done. Going into the courtroom and telling people outside what is happening to Assange. It's not just about Assange. It's about showing the British government working with the American government not being democracies. They claim to be democracies to the point they bomb and murder other people for democracy. And I'm in the courtroom and I do not see democracy, the exact opposite. So that, again, is so many things. I just hope that you, that me, that everybody, we can kind of give a voice to the voiceless, if that makes sense, and get that message across. And that Arabic viewpoint, you're not going to hear it in mainstream media. The Black viewpoint, you're not going to hear it in mainstream media. There's so many voices that are crushed, and we need to counter that. We need to give them and amplify them.
Yeah. I mean, you gave a great example of how it is even here in the United States. Me expressing the opinions that I have, number one, I'm already suppressed because they don't want to hear somebody, especially who's Black, queer, and disabled, saying the things that I say. But what if my name was Jaybefaunt? Oh, I'd probably be, suppressed even more if I was a Jaybefaunt.
Yeah.
But, what I'm saying? So it just goes to show exactly what you were saying. Now, as somebody who lives in the West, but is somewhat outside of the beast, I like to call it, the United States, because it is a beast. What is one of the biggest issues you see with the left, especially within the United States?
Right. So what I see in the belly of the beast is that there is there are some conflicting definitions about what left means. And this is not some like Puritan, I'm more left than you. No. This is decades and decades of activism, journalism, civilian protest movements, and of course even just decolonization itself, which have nothing to do with what the current left claim to be. But I could say the same thing in the UK, by the way, because what people perceive as left is not really left. It's actually more right wing than anything. And I think in America it's even more true. I know you know this, of course, and the viewers probably know this, but it's always worth repeating that the Democratic Party, if we took that party and put it in Europe, it would be viewed as a right wing party because it is right wing.
Yeah.
And it's only to the left of the Republican Party by like a millimeter, maybe. I
Yeah.
don't even know if you can say that, but it's certainly not a leftist party. And even unfortunately, even among some people who say, okay, well, I don't associate or identify with the American or British left or European left. I think that imperialism is wrong. The thing is that even afterwards, you will hear a lot of they'll repeat stereotypes about
Mm,
people in the global South, so
mm,
they'll be like, okay, I don't want to bomb Iraq, or sorry, I don't want to bomb Syria, for example. We have to pick the country we're going to talk about because so many of them are being bombed.
yeah.
But like they'll say, I'm against the US being in Syria, but Assad is XYZ. So they start playing back into the same narrative that was used by the
Yeah.
Americans, by the British, by the French, by the Europeans, by the Israelis, the Turks, the Saudis, to go and destroy Syria in the first place. You know,
Yeah.
and when you point that out, that they're repeating the exact same stereotypes, and some of them
Yeah.
have been debunked, like the chemical attacks.
Yeah.
They go nuts. They think that that this is like uh, unconscionable or something. And you can see with that with Iran, for example, right now, like they don't understand that these countries are certainly not perfect, but the stereotypes you're repeating are the exact same ones being used to infiltrate those countries, destabilize them. And they're doing that because Iran has a foreign policy that's unfavorable to the Israelis, unfavorable to the Americans. Same thing with Syria. Syria has a foreign policy that is unfavorable to Western colonial powers, to the Zionists. So when you're repeating the same stereotypes as them, I mean, I don't understand what you're doing, and who you're helping here exactly. Like, this is a big issue. And you hear things like, oh, this guy's a dictator, that guy's a dictator. Once again, do you actually care about what people there feel because all these people that you're calling dictators, the people in those countries actually want them. You go to Venezuela, and once again, no one's saying it's a perfect country, but people actually want Maduro as their president.
Yeah.
Like, why are you trying to impose some nobody named Guaido? With Syria, it's even worse. They don't even have an opposition figure, because the groups that ended up, battling their way to the top and becoming the most potent threat to the Syrian government were terrorist groups like Al Qaeda, which rebranded a million times, and they were actually killing each other in that quote unquote opposition. Right? You had so
Mhm.
many countries funding groups in Syria that it became chaotic. They ended up killing each other. There was no program. There was nothing. Like, you're not offering people anything of substance, and you just destroyed the
Yeah.
country. And
Mm,
even to this day, like there were elections in Syria last year, and the West, they call them illegitimate before they even happened. It's like they do the same thing with Venezuela. They do the same thing with Iran. They are apparently the ones who get to decide what elections look like,
mhm.
and who should be in power. And if you actually care about what the majority want there, you would not be repeating these stereotypes. So that's one big issue that I see with the so-called left. On foreign policy, they suck, unfortunately. And
Yeah.
yeah, and a lot of the people that we look up to, revolutionaries, people from the civil rights movement, would not agree with you because they know you're spouting that nonsense from the State Department. They
Yo, Nick, my colleague from RBN, bro, he's always getting on the U.S. left. Like, you guys are not serious. You guys are like for instance, people will be like, oh man, I love the people of Cuba, but the Castro regime, they're just horrible. And it's like, wait a minute, who told you that the Castro regime was horrible? In fact, why do you call them regime?
There you go. There you
Like,
go.
like for instance, it's just like, for instance, people will talk about the DPRK and they'll be like, oh my God, Kim Jong Un, he's a dictator. And it's like, how so? And then they'll start spouting all these things that they heard from the State Department of the United States. And
Yep.
then guess what? It's like, but is it true? How do the people there feel? And on top of that, Why are we denying the sovereignty of the people who actually elected the people in power in their countries? Who are we to say anything otherwise?
Exactly. Exactly. That is what annoys me. This is some colonial bullshit. It's this mantra of we the Westerners will decide who which vassal rules this kingdom in the faraway lands, and it just which just happens to conform with our energy interests. Oh boy, yes, they have a lot of gas and oil. So
they have a lot of gas and oil and petrol. We need to take their resources. Because if we take their resources,
it has to be ours.
It has to be ours.
Oh man,
where are those gigantic diamonds? I want them for my crown. Like the people lost their their shit when
don't get me started on that.
When Lizzie died, they lost their shit because they were like, "Oh my god, she's the monarch, and how are you going to disrespect her?" Like,
what century are you in?
This motherfucker, she decided to continue. I think it was in Kenya. She decided to continue the shit that they were doing.
Yep.
You know, as far as imperialism is concerned, and you want to revere her? You want to revere the hag? Come on.
Look, this is the crazy thing is that you can pick almost any African country and you'll find some genocide or massacre or disaster that was done by the Germans or the French or the British. You know, and of course, I know a lot of them, they call themselves democracies now, apparently. But you know, yeah, exactly. They're still controlling those countries. You know, I always say this because it you know, it blows even my mind. But there are many Central and 14 African countries that still have their currency minted in by the French. Wow. So their currency, their money, the CFA franc is controlled by the French. Like, how is that independence? How is that decolonization? How is that that the French they're mining all of this uranium in Niger, which powers their nuclear energy, right? The French are really big on nuclear energy. 70% of their electricity in France comes from from nuclear. Okay, but the uranium that they need to fuel that is mined in Niger. So that's being used to help, you know, to power their nice little bistros and museums and their cafes. And then people in Niger who, again, they're still being exploited by the French. They don't have any of that infrastructure. They don't have nuclear energy. They don't even have a regular power grid. Like how is that fair? How is that fair? This is colonialism. Some might call it neo-colonialism. I don't give a shit. It's a colonialism. And it's one example of how the corporations have kind of taken on the role of the state of continuing that exploitation. They're one and the same. They're one and the same. You know, I'll just remind the viewers that the French had to nationalize Énergie de France, which is EDF, the energy giant, a few weeks ago, just like the Germans had to do it because they're going broke because of their genius sanctions. So again, these are state industries, and it's not fair that these countries to this day don't even have basic infrastructure. And you'll hear shit like, oh, well, the British, they gave the Indians the railroads and the telephone lines. Yeah, we only built that because we were trying to smuggle shit out of the country and rob them. Like, what? Of course we built railroads. How do you think we're going to transport all of the crap that we stole and run the colony? We didn't build it for them. By the way, they had to pay for it. The Indians paid for the trains. Like, we didn't even just bring them there and build them. We made them pay for the stuff, for the vehicles we used to rob their country.
But yo, that the logic that the West uses, that's like taking somebody prisoner and then you construct the cell and the locks that you lock them up with, and you say, oh, these were created by us to secure you in the cell to make sure you're safe. Like, what the uh-oh. What happened? Oh, I don't know what happened.
I don't know. Sorry. I'm still here. I'm still here.
Okay. But no, it's just like somebody creating a jail cell with locks that you created, and you're expecting them to give you credit for creating these locks to keep them secure. Like, what? Are you kidding me right now? That is the wildest, most psychopathic shit I have ever
Yep.
heard in my life. And then it's just like what they tell those of us who are black in the United States. Well, they're underdeveloped and you guys have it better here. And if we haven't enslaved you and brought you over here, then you wouldn't have it as good. Like, what? And this is the colonial mindset that constantly goes through within this country. And I think that and a former RBM member, my sister Josana, she always says this: we have to decolonize our minds.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we don't, then we're going to continue this. This is why you got people like me reading books, on this channel from Michael Parenti and George Jackson.
Very good.
Right? Yep. Because I'm like, look, like for instance, George Jackson, the reading I did last night, he's making the case that the United States has been a fascist country for a long time.
Oh, don't dare you say that. That this is heresy. Dare you say that? People get offended. Like it's okay to call every other country on the earth a regime and they're fascist and we have to go bomb the shit out of them. But dare you say that about the West? Oh no.
Well, you know what I say to them? You know what I say to them? Cry harder. Cry harder. Look, if you take the elements of what it actually means, because look, I know a lot of people say they don't like labels, but I do think labels are important. They just need to be properly labeled according to the actual terminology. The United States, if you look at it from the actual definition of fascism, look, if it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, and quacks like a duck, motherfucker, guess what? It's a fascist.
I think the goose. I think they say the goose is used. Sorry, I'm being pedantic here, but I absolutely agree with you. In the end, it's. I think it's incredible how they're ready to call the Cubans, dictators, and like everybody else is a dictator except them. Like again, look at the behavior. Look at the behavior. Yeah. Look what they do. Look at the politics, and you tell me which one is more authoritarian, which one is less democratic, which one is actually behaving like it's crazy to me how and again, Donald Trump can go to hell. But it's funny to me how the Democrats were saying that if you don't vote for Biden, you're going to help elect a fascist. Look how the Democrats are so hell bent on merging corporations with the state, which is a hallmark of fascism, to censor opponents. So they're doing that, of course, with they've been doing this for a while, but now it's getting even worse with Twitter, with YouTube, with all of these big platforms, Facebook. They have the oppressors, the bullies, deciding what the bullied and the oppressed are allowed to say. And they're, once again, like I said, they're merging the power of corporations, who have a monopoly, by the way, on the world market, with the state, and silencing opponents, silencing dissent internationally, not even just in the country which would be bad enough. I remember last year I mean, look how petty this stuff is. This is Biden. He used sanctions imposed by Donald Trump on Iran to go and knock out 30 news outlets' websites. Not ban them in America. No, steal the fucking website, the actual domain. So Press TV, go to presstv.com like right now. Look at what it says. That it's gone. It says it's been seized by the federal government. They actually seized the website of an outlet that is not based in the United States, that has no business in the United States, a foreign news outlet with, like that shows you how hell bent they are in censorship. And again, Donald Trump, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, and anyone with any common sense, when he killed Soleimani, that was an act of war. If the Iranians had done that, the United States would declare war. There you go. There you go. That's one example. Press TV is one example. They did it to like 20, between 20 to 30 outlets. Some of them Arabic language, English language, basically either favorable to Iran or connected to Iran in some way. And this is again continued now with RT, and it's not even just that, right? Like you can be completely independent, like you and I, and you still get censored or throttled, or they'll also age restrict your videos. I remember when Jacob Blake, he was shot by the police and paralyzed. YouTube age restricted my video. There was no violence in the video. I was just talking about it. And that's one way they'll make sure that people don't actually arrive to your content. I can give you an example, like that video of the American helicopter shooting journalists and civilians in Iraq, the one that was published by WikiLeaks. It's also age restricted. That's one of the most like important journalistic documents of the last decade, and you can't watch it without signing in and giving your passport or something. It's one of the ways they use it. But again, like let's say violence aside, it's just brazen censorship. You say something that doesn't conform to their State Department diarrhea, they'll come for you. And that shows you how they really are wearing those jackboots and stepping out like geese. They're fascists. That's it.
Yeah, and people really need to realize that both parties are one and the same. I recommend anybody to read the book by Dr. Seuss, One Fash, Two Fash, Red Fash, Blue Fash. It's a great book. You'll love it, but make sure to read that book. It's not a real book. I'm just being facetious.
I know. But it's still, it should be one.
Yeah, it should be.
Oh man, that's amazing. And you really hit the nail on the head. And I would just add to what you said. It's true as ever in the UK as well, between Tories, so conservatives, and Labour. That party is really a disgusting cesspit. I mean, I've never joined a political party in my life, and the way things are, I probably won't either. And I wouldn't want to go near those places, because they are filled with people who have the same viewpoints, who are imperialists. I saw there's a recent investigation by Al Jazeera. I know Al Jazeera, depending whether you're watching the Arabic or the English version and what topic, it can differ greatly, but they did some investigation into the Labour Party. Now, again, keep in mind, this is supposed to be the left in the UK, supposedly. And you can see how they really destroyed a lot of people's reputations. They made up the most outrageous lies and scandals, like out of thin air, to discredit Jeremy Corbyn, who was the head of the damn party, not some backbencher. Wow. Which it would still not even be okay. But they got rid of him, and they did it by calling him an anti-Semite. The guy who's been fighting racism his whole life. He's apparently a racist. Like, you can't make this shit up. It's unreal. It's unreal. And they did this with Chris Williamson, and they do this to anybody who's criticizing, and not even criticizing, just standing up for Palestinians, like saying I support Palestine. The people inside these parties, Tories and Labour, and the media with them, they all come along for the chorus. They get together and they start doing this in tandem. They bully you, they vilify you, and that shows you once again that whether you're in America or you're in Britain, it's two heads. Both parties are basically two heads of the same snake. You're dealing with the same exact thing.
It is basically a hydra, basically. So
it's really disgusting.
Now, I typically ask this question of anybody who is, a United States citizen.
Hold on a second, bro. I think you're muted for some reason. I can't hear you. 1 second. I'm just wait. I think I can hear you now.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, dang it! I apologize, man. My computer has been going haywire.
I can keep talking until you hear me.
I'm not sure I hear anything.
Can you hear me still? Can anybody in the chat hear me?
No, I still can't hear you. Sorry, give me 1 sec. I apologize for the
Okay. Can you still hear me?
I think my headphones died. That's probably what it is.
Oh.
It's okay. I'm what? Hold on. I think it should work now on the speaker. Could you just say something for me?
Something for me?
Yeah, I hear you now. Okay, sorry about that. I think the headphones died. I just need to charge them, but I can hear you now.
Okay, good.
Sorry.
No, it's all good. Everything's still coming in loud and clear. So
Okay, great.
everybody else can hear us. So they're all giving us confirmation they can hear.
Okay, good, good.
But another one of my questions that I have, this is a hypothetical. So let's say hypothetically you are a United States citizen and you can become president and you are elected president of the United States. What are your first 3 actions you're taking as president within your first 100 days?
Number 1, I would cut support to Israel. That's number 1. Number 2, lift all sanctions against Iran, Cuba, Syria, Venezuela, North Korea, etc., etc. You know, and number 3, close down all foreign U.S. military bases.
That's over. But wait, but Richard, that's over 800 military bases.
That's a lot of your money. That's what that is.
I love
Yeah.
it. Oh man, but yeah, I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you. It is those are very good, and I'm look. I thought you were gonna be like, let me give me a sec to think about it. You just boom, boom, boom. I'm like,
I never thought about it, but it just came out. Oh man, you know, I'm sure there are obviously a lot of other good things to do, but like that's a good place to start, I suppose. If I maybe a few more minutes to think about it, I'd maybe put the first 3 into number 1 and come up with another. I'm gonna get greedy.
hey,
I
don't mind.
I would get assassinated before I did number 1. So there's like
same here. Trust me.
Oh,
we
God.
both would be goners. So what is something that you want to double down on in 2022, going into 2023?
In terms of like politics issues that we cover, or
yeah.
Well, I think something that's I would go back to what I said to you earlier with this idea of kind of giving a platform or amplifying the viewpoints that you don't hear, because again I see this as sort of like a moral obligation, a duty, you know, to use what I have, and give a I know it sounds I don't know if it sounds grandiose or something, but just like to give a voice to the voiceless. That's what I'm trying to say. So I think and that of course includes a lot of things, right? Like whether we were talking about just educating people about like Black history, like Black liberation movement, right? Because I feel like in the US and even in Europe, right, they will like they'll idolize Martin Luther King, which is absolutely fine and good, but then when it comes to like other revolutionaries from the Black Panther Party, you know, or Abu Jamal we were talking about, like they won't let you even know about them, you know. And when you do hear about them, they'll try to portray them as criminals, or like, oh yeah, but they did this, you know. There's always like some caveat to smear them or like not put them in the limelight. And to like on the same pedestal, and we know why they do that, because they of course want to keep the, you know, people worldwide, not just in America, but keep them colonized, like that. Okay, you can do this much, but any more than that is not okay. And we, you know, like that it's a that's their regime, no pun intended. So and then of course going back to what's happening in Palestine, what's happening in Iran, in Syria, these countries, they're constantly demonized. That's easy to do. That's lazy. You know,
Yeah.
there's nothing brave about that. What is challenging is to stand up for the people in those countries who are affected by American politics and British politics, but who don't have a say in that. And they are not only oppressed, they're not allowed to speak. Like, that's what's so crazy, right? And I feel it's the same about whether we're talking about Palestinians at the hands of the Israelis, or Black Americans at the hands of the U.S. snake. You know, it's like you have to tolerate their crap, and then you're on top of that, you're not even allowed to say anything. Like, they want to maintain the narrative control. That is what is so insulting and egregious to me. So, you know, that's what I would double down on, is hopefully trying to educate people. And it's really tough now. Like, you know, whether you're talking about Russia, whether you're talking about any of these topics, they are really trying their best to shut us up, and we're not going to let it happen. It's not happening.
Yeah, I mean, look, let's put historical context into this. At the time when Dr. Martin Luther King had a disapproval rating of 75% in this country, the country hated the man. He was
I remember that. Yep.
And even J. Edgar Hoover considered Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to be the most dangerous man in America.
Yeah, you see how they treat them like terrorists. That's what they do. They vilify them and marginalize them and spy on them and try to destroy their lives. And they're doing those same tactics to this day, albeit every case is different. You know, every person is different, but it's the same mentality. You know.
True, very true.
And then that's what's I find that insulting that, you know, he was vilified at the time of his death, and then now people turn around and act like, oh, we loved him, and you know, again, it's like they're not being honest. They even right now, with things that they can affect, these politicians, they're not being honest about how they you know, like reparations, for example. That's something that is like not even in the conversation. Like, you know, you're not that forget about that, right? Like, what?
Exactly.
Germany paid reparations to the Jews that they massacred till a couple of years ago, as they should. So why is that not why shouldn't the United States pay Black people in America reparations? Or actually, it should not just be the United States. I remember the I think it was Harry, someone from or William, I don't know, I don't care for the royal family, but they you know, he went to Jamaica, and you know, he didn't even like really say, this was a few months ago, he didn't even really apologize for slavery. He like went just short of apologizing. And of course, reparations is not even, you know, it's not even in the conversation. But they're living lavish with their nice diamonds and everything. You know, they're allowed to be given money by taxpayers and you know, afforded a beautiful lifestyle. But the victims of their lifestyle, of their empire, which they represent, because if you want to say that the queen she's innocent, it's just a ceremonial role. It's symbolic. Yeah. So you got to own the the bad shit that she symbolizes as well. You can't just pick and choose the nice things. She's the longest reigning monarch in history, in British history. And during her reign, we had the British Empire, and we still have the British Empire in a, albeit in a different form, in a different manifestation, but the same dynamic. So to act like she has nothing to do with that, that's disgusting. And there's a lot that they can do for victims of slavery, victims of genocide, you know, but they're not doing it, and they're dishonest about it. They're extremely dishonest and disingenuous. You know, I think you know, people would much rather have someone heading the treasury who is not, you know, starving people in Yemen. Whether they're a man or a woman is irrelevant. You know, if people understood what the Treasury is doing, what the State Department does, and of course the EU, by the way, they play ball with these sanctions. Like, people would rather you stop starving people overseas and preventing them from buying medicine than having a symbolic female occupant in that office. You know, like that. Yeah. They're abusing, and they're like using women and Black people and people of color as tokens instead of actually changing the policies.
Yeah, because everybody knows it was a beast. As foreign policy concerned. So now I have a couple fun questions, if I would like to, if you don't mind.
Sure.
What is one that not live? Please. Curious about.
Sorry, bro, it cut out. Could you repeat it again?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah. What is one food that you cannot live without?
Oh, it's French fries. I'm gonna be honest,
You mean
man.
freedom fries?
Look, you see, that's why I'm wearing yellow. It's yeah.
Oh yeah. Well. All right.
You could add a couple to that list. Shawarma. I had an amazing lamb shawarma the other day, which is
Ooh.
I was ecstatic. The hummus is another good one, but a lot of this food is not that healthy, so I'm not gonna go through the whole list.
It doesn't matter. I mean, if it makes you feel good, you know what I mean. You know that's what matters. You don't have to have it all the time.
Yeah, right.
I mean, look, everybody should have cake for breakfast at least once a year.
I agree. There's
Just
a couple of occasions we can do, like in birthday, Christmas. I don't know.
yeah, just because. So, what is your favorite curse word?
Oh, come on, man. That's a tough question.
I know there's a plethora of
Oh,
ways that you can go, and then you can go in any language too. So,
well, I hate to be I hate to be very boring with this response. I guess it's fuck, but I swear a lot. So maybe
it's
someone can
okay.
like calculate which one I say the most, and then tell me what my favorite is. I don't know.
Well, I do have to say this. I do love and respect the way when you're going on a rant and you say motherfuckers, it rolls off the tongue so nicely with you, man. I'm like,
Well, thank you.
good.
I'm usually pissed off, so I hope that I can communicate my ideas in the most effective way possible. That's good to hear.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so this is actually my last question. I want to make sure I get through all of this before I let you go.
Please,
This
it's my
one's a
pleasure.
deeper. This is a deep question, though. So you've lived a long life, and you're on your deathbed, reflecting on that life. What is one thought that you want people to remember about you?
Fuck Israel. I don't know, man. There's a lot of thoughts that I would like them to remember. I want them to not forget about the West's crimes and to work against them. And because
Yeah.
we're living in the 21st century,
Yes.
and the power center in today's age is in the West, right?
Yeah.
If you go back into 2,000 years, it'll be Rome. But today it's in the West, it's in Europe, and especially
Yeah.
in the US. And the crimes are still continuing in Africa, in the Middle East, in Asia, in Latin America. They're still ongoing. And just please remember my words and the points that I made, and don't let them fool you and brainwash you into buying their State Department nonsense. That's it, I guess. I don't know. And
So
yeah.
I guess on your headstone it'll say Richard Medhurst. He told the truth, right?
I hope so. I try my best to give not just the truth, but like an informed, opinion and background information. I think that if you understand the history of a particular country or region or topic, it gives you so much context in how to tackle it.
Hmm.
Yeah, you brought up North Korea, by the way, earlier.
Hmm.
How once again, this is a country that they vilify, and they say, well, the people there are brainwashed. They make fun of them like they're sheep or something. And I just want to say one thing. And they portray the Koreans in North Korea like they just hate America for no reason, because they just hate Americans. Uh, the United States killed 20% of North Korea's population in 3 years. Remember that. When you know this, you understand why they say those things. They don't hate you or me. They just want to be left the hell alone. And that
Yeah.
goes for most of the oppressed peoples on
Yeah.
Earth. And
Yeah.
again, I really hope that we can turn the tide, because I feel like right now that it's getting a lot worse with how the media are intent on imposing a certain viewpoint. Like, you have to think this way about Russia and Ukraine and NATO, and anything else is not allowed. And the corporations then help them stomp out and crush anybody who says otherwise. And it's becoming very, very, very authoritarian now. I didn't even know that it could get this bad on top of what it already was. But yes, it gets bad, of course, as the the West never fails to deliver in that regard. So we have a duty, we have an obligation to fight that, and it's really bad. The the labels that they're putting on people, the censorship. It's not just people getting fired; it's entire populations, countries that are silenced, and they've been doing this for a long time. And so I mean, it's really important that we counter that, we fight against it. The mainstream media, no one trusts them anymore. No one has any faith in them. And I think more and more people are growing skeptical, and that's why people turn to independent media. So like we really have an obligation to educate as much as we can, regardless, irrespective of the topic, and do our job, because that is not a media. Like they're literally corporations. It's in the name. BBC, all of them, they're all corporations. They have a profit incentive. They're only interested in making money and lying for the government. That's not news. That is propaganda. We are offering news. We are doing our best to deliver the truth, and to educate people. So that's something important to do. And I mean, it's already bad enough. What happened to Black people in America, what's happening to Palestinians, what is still happening to all of these countries, all of these people around the world. But it's even worse to not have their voices heard, and to erase the history, and uproot them and silence them. That because they want to get away with it, and we can't let them get away with it.
Yeah. Look, I'm leaving the last word with you. That was great. I really appreciate your perspective. I'm trying to get more people who are in the same people who have family and loved ones, and people who know about what's going on in the global South, as well as in the Middle East and North Africa and Asia and South America. I want to get more voices like that as well, because you don't hear enough of it. And no offense to anybody who's in this media space who's on the left, but there's a lot of white guys. It just is. And we need a little bit more flavor, you know what I mean, in this space.
I absolutely know what you mean. And again, it's even sadder when you see people for marginalized groups repeating the crap that comes out of the mainstream. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, that's the worst thing. That's the worst crap. Like, you're doing their bidding for free. Like, what is that? What is that? Like, you have some self-respect, like no, seriously, I'm gonna get pissed off now. Like this angers me. Like, how dare you?
I know.
I will just say one thing. There's a phrase in Arabic. I don't recall if it's a Bedouin proverb, but it's in Arabic, and I'll just translate it like roughly. It means, it's basically me and my brother against my cousin. Me and my brother and my cousin against the world. So it basically means, like, even if you had like internal beef with your family, you don't let an outsider come in and mess with your home, your country, and so on. Right. And that's what a lot of people are doing by supporting these Western policies. They like, you see people in like Florida who are Cuban, and they're like, yes, bomb Cuba. Like, what the hell is wrong with you? Like, and you got people, Syrians who are exiled, who say the same shit. Like, they're so happy to see people in Syria starving, or like, exiled Iranians saying that about Iran. Like, do you like your country? Or you don't like your country? Like, make your mind up. You can't say I want to free my country by starving the people there to death. Like, what is that? So yeah.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Cuba just showed that they're actually more progressive than the United States, but nobody wants to talk about it.
Hey, I love that when you start just stating what their foreign policy is and their domestic policies, you end up debunking a lot of the propaganda, right? But of course, don't say that, because they want to believe they're more progressive in the UK and the US, and they want to live in this fantasy. Sure.
Yeah. So yeah, we're here to smash that fantasy and bring y'all back to reality,
Yep.
and that's one of the reasons why I had Richard Medhurst on. Welcome to reality, folks.
It's not pretty, but this is it. And I'm really grateful you brought me on. It's a pleasure, and we got to do this again anytime, always. It's always a good conversation, and uh, there's no topic we can't touch on. Seriously.
Yeah, definitely. We'll touch on a lot more next time you come back around, and I can't wait to. I want to have you back on sooner than last time, so I can't wait.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Anytime, bro. And it's my pleasure. And
thank
thank
you.
you everybody for tuning in. And uh, you know, the books that you mentioned, by the way, they're very good as well. I would second reading them. So yeah.
Yeah. So thank you so very much, Richard Medhurst, everybody. I'll catch you on the internet. All right.
Yes.
Take care. All
Thank you,
right.
brother. Bye
Thank
bye.
you. Bye bye. So that was a wonderful conversation. It actually went longer than I was planning. I was planning for just an hour. We went 95 minutes. So that was great. I thank you so much to everybody who's here. Thank you so much to everybody. Have you guys given a like yet? Have you guys liked the stream? Please make sure, because you know the YouTube algorithm just doesn't like people like me. They don't. And guess what? We're constantly being suppressed. You know, like a couple weeks back, I had an issue that I was talking about. I think I was talking about police brutality or something like that. And my video was age restricted. Like, what? It's not like I was, taking my shirt off and showing the goods, on the screen, and or like, oh, we got to age restrict this. No, I'm talking about something important like police brutality, and you guys want to age restrict me? Really? So yeah, that's what's going on. So please make sure to give a like. If you have not subscribed yet, please make sure to subscribe. I'm going to be going to some super chats as well as some people in the chat. Roger Meadows, thank you for the super chat. Says Abu Ghraib, late 20s, early 30s, fellow Gen Xer, are we, Jay? I am a millennial, but I'm what's called an elder millennial. So, but yeah, I remember Abu Ghraib because I think I was in my 20s when that happened. Yeah, so it's crazy. Thank you also for this, Roger Meadows. Windows 95, 98 backdoor for the NSA. What? Yeah, it's crazy. But you start to realize that the national security state and big tech actually are in marriage together when it comes to a lot of things. And I mean, look, Edward Snowden even talked about things like this, right? Edward Snowden talked about how they can listen in on your conversations either through your smart TV or through, your computer, things like that. So, yeah, Edward Snowden even talked about things like this. Roger Meadows says Truman was the worst president for creating CIA, NSA, military industrial complex. Yeah, thank you so very much. Thank you for the tip, JM. Or the super sticker JM, who's also a JB member. Thank you so much, JM, as well. You see, Vinny says colonies were considered private properties of the monarch, so the role of the monarch over colonies is not symbolic. Abolish political parties. Thank you so very much for that, Vinny, as well. I really appreciate it. We also have What's Left, news analyst with Jay Snow. Says, great interview, JB. Thank you. I'm also happy to see RBN collaborating with my other favorite lefty news outlets like Richard Medhurst and Brianna Joy Gray. You guys and gals give me hope. Thank you. Thank you so very much. Really appreciate that. We're trying to, put the voices out there as much as we possibly can because, well, people need to know the truth. And also, people need to realize the power that they have and that it is not with these corporate governments that are basically stripping our rights away as we speak, whatever rights that we have left. And basically, this is an oligopoly, it's not a true democracy that we live in. it's not even a representative democracy, because if the representatives for this democracy are being directed by the corporations of what to do and what to say, then really is it even a republic? You know what I mean? Is it even a representative democracy? Representative for whom? So yeah, that's one thing that people just don't realize. Um, so good to see you, Gene. Gene says, I think it's funny how people in the US put themselves in so many groups. That's true. A lot of times, is we tend to center ourselves. I think that's sort of a white supremacist thing, is where you center yourself when it's not about you. The United States is a very very arrogant country, very the self-importance that the United States has, and it's like, well, our values and our way of life, and it's like, but the people over there have a different value system. They have a different way of life that works for them, that they want. Who are we to tell them otherwise? Now, we could try to provide an example by how we live our lives in this country, but to dictate to people what they do in their own country, especially when it's done in a democratic way, who are we to come in and dictate, what they do? So, yeah. Hang on. Okay. Oops. Taiji says, oh, you're considering. You see, has Fed Jimmy Dore, Jackson Hinkle, Aaron Monte, Richard Medhurst, Ryan Christensen, Jason Burma's Convo Couch, all info to upend transhumanism. I'm still like confused on that subject, but yeah. So it's good to see a CBC voter in the chat. Stadia Alone says it's difficult to state labels because language is somewhat based on them. So yeah. I was born in the 80s. If you were born in the 70s or 80s, you are Gen X. That's not from what I've heard. If you're born, I think it's between 80 and like 94 or 95, they consider you millennial. I was born in 84. So my oldest brother's Gen X because he was born in the 70s. So so that's what I'm considered. But I identify with Gen X, as far as the way they grew up too. Because look, I grew up drinking from the garden hose and being out, out of the house for hours and hours until it's time for the street lights to come on. So I know exactly what that's like too. So let me just make sure also that I get to the people on Rockfin as well. Oh wait, let me make sure I do this quick. Pop out the chat. Pop out the chat. Pop out the chat. Let me see. All right. Okay. So in the Rockfin chat, Jacob Greismer says, asking the victim of the Queen or Empire to respect them is like asking the victim of Jeffrey Dahmer to respect them. It's beyond disrespectful. It's flat out evil. Jenny, thank you so much. Says, so glad to see Richard Medhurst with JB. Thank you so very much. Jacob Greisman says, page 233, Killing Hope by William Blum. The military guys who did this are like serial killers. If Jeffrey Dahmer had been in Guatemala, he would have been a general by now. Ooh, wow. In Guatemala City, right-wing terrorists machine gun people in houses in full light of day. Journalists, lawyers, students, etc. U.S.-backed Capasas killed a third of East Timor, greatest proportional genocide since Holocaust. A third of the Hmong tribes were killed due to coerced U.S. support in the secret war in Laos during the American War in Southeast Asia, i.e., Vietnam. Abu Ghraib is the tip of the iceberg, a euphemism. John the Testicle Crusher. Let's see. So thank you as well for Jacob Greismer says a quick 101 on transhumanism. Thank you for the tip on Rockman. He says we will be human con animated machines. Dennis Bushnell, Chief Scientist, NSA Langley. Okay. And also good to see you, Rory O'Neill, as well. Okay, so just to let you guys know, because I have to also get ready for my show on RBN. So I will be live at 1 p.m. Eastern on RBN. I'm going to be talking about the issue of Biden pardoning people for simple marijuana possession, as well as I'll be talking about a police officer shooting at a teenager just trying to eat a meal. So I'll be talking about that on RBN. So if you guys catch me there at 1 p.m. Eastern, I'll be on there as well. Also, the reading on Rockfin from Blood in My Eye by George Jackson is already up, and I will be doing the reading for Dirty Truths by Michael Parenti later today. I'll be doing the next reading for that as well. Yes, I do readings from these books on my channel. So if you guys would like to hear these books, then please make sure to do so. I also encourage anybody to, if they can, buy the book. Hopefully, the families, of George Jackson and Michael Parenti get the proceeds or the sales from these books. I'm not sure if they still do, but I hope so. And if you can buy it, if not, if you're, broke like me and you can't buy the book, well, look, put the name of the book in the Google machine and put PDF afterwards. Just saying, if you can't afford it. But I'd rather, any sales from their hard work of George Jackson and Michael Parenti to go to them, because as a socialist, I actually do believe people getting the value for their labor. Socialists just want to take your stuff. No, we want to actually earn what we actually produce. That's what we want. Don't get me started. Anywho, but yeah. So, also be sure to be on this channel on Jaybefaunt this Tuesday. I'm having Savage Joy Marie Mann on. She's going to be talking about actually putting an appeal to the UN, for basically the United States committing the crime against the people for not giving us all universal health care. So that's going to be also a very interesting conversation that I want to have with Joy. So I'm going to also be loving that conversation coming up. And that's basically it. And I just want to also say hello to all the people in the chat. Wari says, I think they get royalties from first sale. Second-hand sales provide no royalty, so it depends on whether the books are still in print or not. Good point. Yeah. And by the way, if you're going to buy a book, please stay away from Amazon. I know there's no ethical consumption in capitalism, so if you have to go through them, then fine. But make them the last resort. At least try. You have burningbooks.com, which is also really good. And I heard that thrift books might be owned by Amazon or not. I'm not exactly sure. But I know Burning Books is also really good. They also have a lot of books from a lot of revolutionaries. So, wait, today's John Lennon's birthday? Really? I didn't know that. Cool. Anywho, yeah, stop shopping online. That's kind of difficult for some people. Some people, especially those of us who are disabled, that's our only means to actually getting things that we need. So unfortunately, you know, ethical consumption in capitalism, we have to just get rid of the system overall. But I understand what you mean, but it's kind of hard for some people to do. But anywho, I just want to thank all of you for being here for this interview. Thank you so much for sticking around. Look, continue to leave the world better than you found it. Do not believe everything corporate media tells you. Drink your tea. Smoke them if you got them. Drink them if you got them. And if you don't got them, watch something funny and laugh. Oh, by the way, forehead kisses to every single one of y'all. And peace in the Middle East, baby. Yes, that's what it's all about. Peace. Peace, be peace, 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 peace. And justice for Palestine.